the founder of Insight Incorporated. She will give, I think, a rather upbeat titled presentation entitled Finding the Happiness Quotient in Handwriting. Please give a warm welcome to June Canoles.
Well, you wonderful people. I'm glad to be here today. I'm glad to see so many friends. Do you know that there are 10 of our challenge students here? And several graduates, which we're very happy to say. All right, we're going to start right off. If we can find where we turn it on. Da-da-da-da. Oh, thank you. All right. The happiness quotient I came up with in our chapter 17 out of the challenge course. And you know how important it is when you have a relationship with somebody that they are happy people or a happy person, and how important it is when you're doing personnel work that you hire people who are happy, peaceful, get along, go along, team play, as they ask me over and over again. So if a person is not happy, then we have problems in the workplace, we have problems in relationship. First of all, it's important, as we all know, to look at the handwriting in a Gestalt manner so that we see what stands out, what hits us. Does the writing invite us in? Does it repel us or deny us or wall up? Does it say something to us that makes us suspicious of it? Or is it too large or too small? Does it flow? Is it stiff, as we learned yesterday? Is it high form? Is it low form? So we always have to get that first impression, the Gestalt. We have to understand first, because everything that we find in the handwriting will impact every identifier. Everything will be changed by what we see in the Gestalt. Did we lose you again? No. All right. Now, what is the first thing that you see in this writing? I just made it very simple. What is the first? Small. So that means that it's going to be, it's intensified, it's concentrated, so that every quality intensifier in this, identifier in this writing will be intensified. So that's important to know. Then when you look at this second handwriting here, we see quite the opposite. We see what? Large and confusion, big loops, lots of wants, lots of needs. Too much, too much, too much. Actually, this girl discovered hand gliding, and she needs it. And those are wings. Those are like wings, you know. But when there is an overlapping and something is too much, well, first of all, when something is too much, this is the dog not wagging the tail, but the tail wagging the dog, because she's pulled around by all her needs and all her wants. But besides that, we know that you lose your objectivity. This person will lose her objectivity, certainly her ability to organize well, because she has too many irons in the fire, and it hampers clear thinking. So always, 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 we must first get the feel for the writing before we ever look at anything. I won't say anything about a certain school, but a certain school has a tendency to always look and find some, what they call trait, but we want to see what we feel of the whole and not jump in there too fast, because if we jump in there too fast, we really make big mistakes. Now, it is always well to have some kind, this graph I did not give you because it's out of the New Slant and Business lecture that we prepare for anyone that wants to buy it, and we didn't want you to have this because we want you to buy it. But, I mean, to be really honest. But it is good to have this kind of a chart so that you can show when you're giving a presentation that we do have a logical order when we do handwriting analysis. And it is very impressive, especially to men who are convinced that we belong to the voodoo group. So when we have a presentation to make, it's good to draw up something like this and start with something that they would be interested in. And certainly the emotional response is important. For me, most of my work is in personnel. So if a person moves towards you or against you or away from you, that is very important. Supposing I'm working to find somebody who's in human relations, or somebody who's going to be working with people all day. Well, it has to be a writing that moves towards them. So that's important. Then we want to look at the mental processes. Is this an analytical person? Is this a methodical person, investigative person? Is this someone who can comprehend quickly? Is it someone who is fluid? Is someone who can land on their feet no matter what happens? All of these maybe. If we're lucky enough, we find all of these in the writing. Then we know the person is very, very bright. So this is important. And then we want to see what drives them. What drives a person? Is it money? Is it pride? Is it social concerns? Is it fear? Is it knowledge? Is it ego? What drives this person? So that is important also for us to pick up. And then we get to what we're going to look at today, which is the private area, the fears and defenses. The fears and defenses, according to the EEOC, are not something we should talk about unless it has to do with some of the questions that they ask us in their job description. For instance, I need someone who can take a lot of criticism. Well, you don't want somebody who makes great big fat D's, or string writing, or light writing. Those people have a hard time with criticism. I need somebody, they'll say, that can work long and hard and after hours and enjoy it. Well, you don't want somebody that writes with a light line. You want somebody that writes with a heavy line, lots of pressure. They enjoy working until they're practically dead.
Practically dead. That's feeding a dead horse.
So that's me. Then they'll say, this person has to work close by others, shoulder to shoulder. And then you don't want somebody with long spaces in between words. One of the groups in Silicon Valley called me up and they said, June, I have someone here and he says that he can work one-on-one with people and enjoy it. I'd like to fax this through to you because we don't think he can. But you make a decision. You tell us what you think. So they faxed it through in big spaces everywhere. So I said, few minutes, of course cost them big bucks. But few minutes I said, well, he can't. And he shouldn't. He wouldn't be happy, you wouldn't be happy, and he would quit. It's not like we reject people. What we do is try to protect people. Why put people in the wrong places when they're going to be unhappy and they're going to leave the organization? So then this whole thing comes down to how credible is the person. Now, this is very simplistic looking, but the whole process is to come down to, is this a stable, credible person? Thank you. Now, what we're going to do now is look into the writing. We're going to look into the writing, and we're going to take one little section and do the identifiers, and we're going to talk about fears and defenses. Fears, adjusters, and defensors. Now, there are two kinds of adjusters. There's fear, which in a perfect world, if we had perfect handwriting, perfect world, we would have low scores for fears, hoping that we all come up with fears and anxieties from our childhood. There is nobody that doesn't have them. That's why we said Jesus wrote in the sand. There is no one that doesn't have fears. All right, but we want them to be low. And then the adjusters, we want to be high. We want a person to have high adjusters so that these don't make any difference. Because this is not an area that's a problem. Sometimes people say to me, oh, look at this, look at this, look at that fear, oh, look at that fear. Ah, forget it. Forget the fears. This is what's important. How does a person cope? How does a person defend himself or herself? That's what's important. Do they adjust? Can they adjust? Do they have high scores in adjustment? And this is where we find the happiness quotient. Because if they attack and they escape, and if it comes in big doses, then the person is not happy. And those, we want to be low scores, but each one of us have scores in this. We have to. Because if we break down, if any of us here may be happy today and very unhappy tomorrow. Maybe there's a divorce. Harriet, we're not getting a divorce. All right, there's a divorce, or they may be, you may hate your job. I didn't want her to go pale on me back there. After 20 years of being friends, I would hate that. We each have a preference. You think to yourself, what is my preference? Would I attack if I'm upset, or would I escape? We all have a preference. Now, we all must have these, but we don't want them to be high scores. Okay. Now, you have this in your folder. Now, there are two things I want you to know about this. One, these are not written in stone. These are just some we've gotten from other areas, some we got from a system, and we have added more to the system. We will continue to add more to the system. Number two, please note this. Every one of these identifiers should have at least 3 to 5 ways to find them. That's what we forget sometimes. You say, well, I just said a little while ago, sensitiveness. Okay, everybody thinks it's a big loop. True, 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 true. But it also is string, but it also is light writing. There are 3 ways to find intuition. Sure, it could be breaks, but it could be far to the right writing. There could be so many other things that are light writing is more intuitive. So, in fact, I think it's a great thing to do in a study group, is to take one quality and research it and find 3, 4, 5 ways to discover that quality, that identifier. Don't just stick with one thing that you learned. When I had a computer program, which I don't have anymore, I had 5 ways to find everything. It was an immense book. Oh, I wouldn't give it out because you'd all be lost. I was lost half the time. But I didn't like it in the end because it really didn't answer my needs. I write everything from scratch for every analysis. It takes me about 1.5 hours to 2 hours to do an analysis. And I do 1 page in a quarter maybe, and I get 165 for that. So that's how you make money. You don't make money writing long, beautiful analysis, because first of all, executives don't want long, beautiful analysis to read, and they won't pay you right. Then you'd have to pay $500, $600. They won't do that. So if you can write short, succinct phrase analysis, you can really make your work pay. But that's another lecture. That's another presentation. All right, I want to go back to the fears just a little bit because I know there are different systems in here, and I just want to alert you to some things that might be problem areas for some of us. Some of these there's no problem. I did star. Now, some of you have learned that this is things that go back on themselves are. They called it in this one system, which we will not name. They called it self-castigation. Now, how would you like to get an analysis? You have self-castigation. Oh my God, what's that? I mean, what am I doing to myself? You know? So nobody wants to hear about self-castigation. That's a terrible thing. It's okay. I'll calm down. So self-blame. People can take that. When you come in for analysis, say, you tend to blame yourself. You're too tough on yourself. You put yourself down. Everybody can take that. But self-castigation is horrible. Then the next one I wanted to say to you is we've added the PPI in here so that we've added the rejection part of the PPI. It might be on the lower or it might be on the upper loop. No, I didn't do that very well. Might be rejection. A rejection is a letter that goes opposite to where it should go. In the PPI, a rejection for the mother or the father or both. And as I teach our students that generally I think and I believe, because I sit with people 2 or 3 times a week, that's how I got my knowledge, is to sit with people and do a cassette so you can make money. Do a cassette so you don't waste time. You know, talk to them. But if you're not a counselor and if you're not a psychologist, put on the cassette. I say, I'm a motivational consultant. I'm not a counselor. I hope you have a counselor. You know, don't try to be something you're not. And I do recommend to go on to counseling and psychology if you can, because it just fits hand in glove with us. However, when you see this, you know that there is some rejection, and so there's some pain and there's some problems that are resultant in the handwriting. That's what we do teach our students, to look at the eye and see the resultant problems, and where you can talk to the person about the pluses, and then come back and gently talk about the problems of rejection, and not to say, oh, your mother did it. No, poor old mothers, they get it all the time. But, or dads, you know, dad's away from home. Well, dad's away from home, dad may die. We don't know what's happening. We say, now one nurturer. Then I say, oh, my mother couldn't. My mother died, or my dad died. So let them tell